dive right in. Rainbow Plate has been boots on the ground. We are a tiny but mighty organization nonprofit organization based in the Toronto area, and we have been working in this space since 2012. And it's important to acknowledge the generous funding that we're currently receiving from our lead sponsor and funder, the Helderly Foundation. We have been delivering a variety of educational programs in the area of food literacy to children since launching in 2012. But what I'm going to focus on in my brief presentation today is our current focus, which is our Rainbow Food Explorers program targeting the early years. And by program, we have a variety of components, but really based on our educators toolkit that we work with, and supportive education and resources that accompany that and support us in reaching a variety of our audiences. This is essentially experiential food education for children in those early years that we've heard so much about today. And our program is not one size fits all. What we have designed it to be is endlessly adaptable and accessible across a wide variety of settings and spaces to enable educators and other adults, as you're going to see, to really weave this approach to food literacy and food education right throughout the fabric of early childhood experience. Our program has a few elements that, again, I've only got a few minutes, but to highlight what makes it unique is that it is joyful. It is this joyful, happy approach to food in and of itself, and it is entirely sensory based. And so we are not focused on nutrients and health when engaging children with food, but rather giving them these endless and repeated opportunities to dive in with all of their senses in order to have repeated opportunities to fall in love with food and experience food in a wide variety of ways. It is an approach that is 100% child-centered. And so in developing this particular program, we worked with a lot of educators and dove into the pedagogy of the early years to really ensure that we were taking a child-centered approach. It really comes down to providing children with repeated opportunities to gain exposure to a wide variety of foods. We know that, and we heard Karina, I was so thrilled listening to her speak this morning, children, they eat what they like. Assuming access, of course, we know that's a big issue, but when given options to choose food, children eat what they like and they like what they know. And so much of this program is giving children opportunities to be exposed on their terms with a wide variety of foods. In the early years, we have this magical window where children have this natural curiosity about the world around them. And so our approach and our program harnesses that and supports educators in working with children to use food as this lens through which children can view and experience and discover all about the entire world around them. And so we're really looking at opportunities for cross-curricular learning and experiences, and really, as we've heard so much today, this notion of the context in which children experience food and they learn to eat and they develop their preferences and behaviors being so important. And so we support children in discovering all about how food is influenced by everything in their world, and in fact, ultimately how their food choices will then go out to influence that world as they grow. And I love this quote from one of the educators in one of our sessions. And quite briefly, we were doing a program and this educator cut open a banana, and inside, if you can see it, there was an inukshuk, a pattern of an inukshuk. And we began this conversation about what would that discovery spark in terms of conversations with very young children, and ranging from bananas to inukshuks to our indigenous people and food. You know, where does food come from and how does food get to different places? And I won't go on because of timing, but the quote that resonated so powerfully with me was how one small thing sparked such a great realm of learning. So our goals as an organization and through our program are really to foster the development of children's relationships, as we've heard, and their positive relationships with food, with eating, and with their bodies. And so this is not framed within the context of obesity prevention. It's rather one that celebrates all bodies and it celebrates all food, because we want children to have this capacity to navigate the world of food, but to be comfortable with their ability to do so. And yes, we are about rainbows, and rainbows really are fruits and vegetables, and we know that ultimately that is so critical. So yes, our goals are to influence children's food preferences by giving them repeated positive experiences with these foods that we know we want to be a greater part of their diet. And ultimately, yes, we hope to see that we can influence children's food preferences and their consumption of fruit and vegetables. Our vision, and it lines up beautifully with some of what we've seen here today, is that sensory-based food education is eventually one day formally integrated into the early years experiences of every child in our great country. And I am working to make that happen however I can. Rainbow Plate works with, we used to work for many years with the children directly. We now work with the adults who support children in those areas where they're developing their relationships with food and eating. So yes, we work with educators in academic settings. We're pleased that our program is now beginning to be woven throughout ECE curriculum. We work directly with early childhood educators and a variety of other health intermediaries who do work directly with children in a variety of settings, ranging from childcares and preschools to public health and other community settings. We work with educators who meet those children in school settings as well. And increasingly, we are expanding to work more directly with parents and caregivers who are, of course, so important in children's lives. Our impact, we have pivoted, as I said. So prior to our current focus on the Rainbow Food Explorers program, we were delivering workshops directly to children and reached many thousands of children through our direct workshops in schools and other settings. Since pivoting to this program, we are now really beginning, and this is only since the beginning of 2019, but our impact is across many different settings, as you can see. So we have now partnerships with different academic programs and colleges where early childhood educators are trained. The program is in place in a variety of childcare organizations and preschools, elementary schools, community-based organizations, and public health. And we have some early data just from 2019 till early this year of the number of children reached. We are, and I will touch on the challenges in measuring impact, but just in 2019, in the beginning of this year, we had a sense that we were reaching, close to 4,000 children, and that's, I think, a fairly conservative estimate. We were so fortunate to have an evaluation of our program when it was the workshop based. And so this was with a great collaboration with Professor Enza Gucciardi and her team at Ryerson University. And that was published in the spring of 2019 in the Journal of Child Nutrition and Management. And we very specifically focused on the evaluation of our workshop program at that point. And the variables that we measured were children's intention to eat, given the option what foods they would select, and their actual consumption. And I'm really proud to share that we were able to demonstrate a clear impact of our Rainbow Food Explorers program with kindergarten children, in that they selected 40% more fruits and vegetables. And in fact, our statistically sound measurements show that they ate 50% more fruits and vegetables following their experience with the Rainbow Plate sensory-based program. Since we pivoted away from directly working with children in this workshop setting, we are looking at how do we evaluate impact? What is it that we should be doing? And I just wanted to very briefly highlight a few of the challenges, and they've been mentioned already today, that what is it that we should be measuring? So what are the outcomes of interest? How do we articulate what it is that we're trying to mention? We're working across diverse settings with different audiences. Is children's food intake what we should be measuring? And given that we're working with them in different settings, can we realistically measure that at home? So that's a challenge. In fact, should we be focusing on impact with those people we are educating, so the educators and parents and other intermediaries themselves? And this is one area that we're looking. And of course, how do we look at the long-term impact of this type of program and its interventions, and how do we determine what we're looking for to measure, and how do we measure those types of those outcomes that we seek? And as with anything, it's always going to be challenging in this space to, if we even can measure those outcomes, how do we demonstrate that they are in fact causal outcomes related to our intervention, separate from correlation, and really navigating through that. We have had such positive outcomes. We are so proud of this program. We know for sure that it is powerful in its capacity. And as with anything, some of the challenges we face in offering it are not surprising. It's enabling our program to get into the spaces where it can benefit all the people that we know that it will. So reaching and engaging with those individuals, finding time to work with those educators and support them and train them in working with children in this way, using this approach to food literacy. Of course, funding, because right now we have this delicate balance between making this program accessible, getting it into all the spaces where it can benefit children, and yet becoming sustainable and viable as an organization doing this key work. Of course, when you're doing food education, there is always a need for food to be part of that. And this is something that we navigate, even though we've made that a very adaptable situation. And currently, of course, how do we pivot and do this in a way that's viable, given that all the organizations we were working with previously are closed. And so as many others are doing, we are pivoting to an online or digital format and navigating that. So I know that time is tight. I want to leave with this image that we are in this beautiful position where there is a powerful opportunity to bring about great change. And I am so excited to be part of this experience, and that I hope will move that situation forward. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Janet. That was fantastic. And Andrew, if you can start sharing your slides when you're ready.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Just want to echo Janet's comment about just feeling very lucky to be a part of this whole experience and to be included amongst all these amazing speakers. I'm going to jump in. Everybody can see the slides?
We can.
Perfect. So my name is Andrew Fleet. I'm the co-founder and executive director for Growing Chefs Ontario. We're a registered charity based here in London, Ontario. Our mission is to get kids excited about healthy, wholesome food and to change the way children, youth, and families in the greater community learn about and develop healthy relationships with food. We run a number of community programs, which we call Growing Communities, on which we partner with over 30 community partners annually to offer customized food education workshops. We also run day camps and community events where we deliver healthy and affordable food options. And all in our community programs reach somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 participants a year. But our main work is through the School Food Education Project, which we've been operating for 12 years now, the last 6 in partnership with our title sponsor, the Western Fair District. All of our school programs are based around set curriculum and strict operational procedures that we've been developing over the past decade. And over the past year, we've been able to proudly partner with the Thames Valley District School Board to have the school board go through our programs and figure out what the learning outcomes that students gain from our program as stated in the elementary curriculum. So essentially what we've been able to do is use food as a vehicle to teach lessons in math and science and history, literacy, geography, and art. All of our programs are based in food systems learning. So every one of our program streams incorporates educating kids about the food system, and we also use the new food literacy framework, as well as those links to the Ontario school curriculum to deliver the programs. This creates the opportunity for teachers to be able to conduct student assessments within our program. So they can actually grade their students on whether or not they're meeting the learning outcomes in the curriculum in our programs, and then share those results with us. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. The 5 program streams I'm going to tell you about, which all together reach about 6,500 students per year. Each of these program streams has a little bit of a unique delivery model to make sure that schools have access to the program that is best suited for the needs of their students. So we go into schools, which reaches just over 2,000 students per year, and deliver food literacy lessons right at the kids' desks, which give them hands-on opportunities to, again, reach those learning outcomes. This is taking objects that are not consistent shapes and figuring out how to cut them, in this case, into consistent sizes and shapes. It's a math activity, as with learning fractions to make salad dressing. But then in all of our activities here, we're making stir fries together, again, using fractions and learning to balance flavor profiles. And at the end, gives the students a chance to lead in those cooking activities, get their hands in there, and have fun in the process. For primary students, we bring classes to our local farmers market where they have opportunity to buy ingredients directly from the farmers, engage with them and ask questions before bringing those ingredients upstairs to the market kitchen where we prepare a full meal that they get to share together before they head back to school. We also run family activity nights or intergenerational programs. So these are the biggest programs that we run, and it gives a chance for up to 150 parents and children to cook together at one time. Obviously, this is pre-COVID shutdown photographs. But this program, just because of its size and scale, really gave us the opportunity to get in there and get hyper organized in the way that we're delivering these programs. So very specific tasks for specific age groups. And as you can see in the picture, we're really just facilitating about 30 different cooking workshops for 4 to 6 children at a time, and then combining the outcome of all of those into a beautiful meal that all these parents and children get to share together in one place and one time. We also offer field trips for junior and intermediate students, as well as some high school students to our space, Growing Chefs headquarters, which is about 2,000 participants a year. Classes come on a daily basis. They get to learn about food production and see food growing in our learning garden. So in the spring, they get to help space out our seeds and plant the garden. Through the summer months, they get to learn how to care for the plants and see them as they grow. And in the fall, be a part of the harvesting. Curriculum-based garden activities, and then sometimes we just let the gardening itself lead the learning and let them have fun exploring on their own. Inside, you can see us exploring our food systems map before we dive in and get cooking. And again, you can see the same type of activities as you've seen in some previous in-school slides, but what you'll notice at every picture is that it's the kids that are leading the activities. We're just there to guide their learning and to encourage them to explore with all their senses and have fun in the process. And this is a little lesson on food preservation techniques. So it gets very sciencey, but from the kids' perspective, it's just all about art and having fun creating and making something that's visually appealing and that they're proud to share with the rest of their class as they sit down in our very fancy formal dining room and share the meal that they prepared together. So we've been lucky to partner with both the school board and the HEAL Lab at the University of Western Ontario to understand the impacts of these programs. The biggest outcome that we learned that came from the teachers was they felt that our program gave an unparalleled opportunity for students to be able to apply what they're learning in all of these different subject areas in the classroom to their day-to-day life. And that context of being able to give them a way to apply that learning to something that they're going to use over and over again was the most exciting. And in fact, it inspired 76% of the teachers to continue trying to incorporate food-themed activities into the classroom. Again, it showed some really positive outcomes, but there were some challenges associated as well, although I'm super proud of all of these results. One of the things I find interesting that I'll point out, you can see in this slide, 89% of the teachers said that the students met their learning outcomes in being able to assess the personal, social, and environmental impacts of our food system and evaluate improvements to the system. Here in the grade 3-4 lesson, again, you saw in the 80% range, teachers assessing that their students could understand ways in which plants have an impact on society and the environment. But when we asked the teachers to correlate that with the food literacy framework, you see the ecological perspective in almost every grade area we asked, where they scored it quite low. So teachers were able to really clearly understand what their students were learning in terms of the curriculum outcomes that they've been trained to use, but not so much in the food literacy outcomes. So our big challenges, that lack of consistency in how teachers understand and measure food literacy, lack of consistency in project evaluation with other programs, and being able to not measure long-term impacts due to being once removed from the students, which is a common problem when trying to evaluate within the school system. Our challenges with delivering the programs, high demand for our programming results in schools sometimes waiting up to 5 years to be able to access the program, competing uses of space in our own space with education programming and income generating events, competing use of space within the schools themselves, and then our space and many of the spaces we use have some physical limitations. Huge thanks to our funders and sponsors that allow us to get our programs out to 10,000 participants every single year. And then just really quickly, because I know I only have about a minute left, one of the biggest important focuses of our program is being able to provide a sustainable funding model for these programs. So at our Growing Chefs headquarters, we operate a healthy hot lunch program for preschools, elementary schools, and daycares across London. We produce 350 meals a day, or about 50,000 meals per year. And we also run income generating events for adults, including adult cooking classes, educational workshops, professional development activities for teachers and daycare providers, and even experiential tourism. And all together, we're raising about over $400,000 a year through our lunch program and these adult focused food literacy events every year, which help to fund and make the education programs possible. And our hope is that this could be used as a model in future to help scale up this type of programming across the province. We've also created a food charter just to help to understand that we feel that all community members need to feel confident in making the best decisions, but using the resources available to them, and making sure that we are not, as a program, promoting any one type of diet or food source over another, and just helping people to approach food very positively. And in conclusion, these wonderful people help us to do what we do, and I like to acknowledge them every time. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be a part of this.
Thank you so much, Andrew. That's impressive that you could tell all of us all of that in 8 minutes. It was very impressive. Karen, when you're ready, you can share your slides.
Okay, why isn't it working? Of course. There we go. I think that's. Hey, everybody. From my dining room here in Vancouver. Thanks so much for giving me a few minutes to give you a brief overview of food skills for families out here in BC. I'm so thrilled to be able to learn from all of you on the call today. So Food Skills for Families is a program that has been consistently funded through the Ministry of Health, through the BC government since 2008. And we are part of the government's food literacy priorities. Currently, we operate out of the BC CDC, the Centre for Disease Control, through the Population Public Health team. And we've been with them since April 1st of 2019. Our program mission, this is really, why do we do what we do? This is really easy. We want to facilitate connection in the kitchen, and we want to get people in the kitchen, building hands-on skills, and we want them to know that cooking and healthy eating can be really quick and it can be really fun. Below our mission comes our program objectives, which really, again, align the work that we do out here in BC. We want to build cooking skills in targeted populations. So I'll talk a little bit more about those sort of 5 core curriculums that we have out here in BC a little later. We want to try and focus on increasing capacity within communities. So we go into communities and we train community facilitators so it's more peer-to-peer learning, so the skills can be taught in communities. We also align with existing food programs out here in BC. So we don't do this work alone, obviously. We partner with a lot of community kitchen, with school-based programs. One of our most important and successful partnerships out here in BC has been with the Farmers Market Nutrition Coupon Program, if anyone has heard of that. So really, these are sort of our program objectives that most of our work comes from. We have so many partners out here in BC, it's hard to talk about. We appreciate them all, but our main partners really are our host organizations. So that's where the program is run. Right now, we work in over 150 communities across BC, very large and very small. Since the program started in 2008, we have worked with over 500 host organizations in the province. And currently, right now, we have 175 active hosts. So by active, we just mean that they have run a program within the last 2 years. A quick look into our curriculum. So our curriculum is 6 sessions. Each session is 3 hours long, and everyone comes together once a week. And the 5 sessions are taught in the kitchen, and session 5 is a grocery store tour. So that's a little bit of a field trip. Obviously, it's not happening right now. All food skills programs are really essentially on hold right now for COVID-19, but this is really how our curriculums function in a normal environment. So session, really, if I break it down into sort of 3 easy pieces, the first hour is really about a healthy eating discussion. It can be around food safety, it could be around meal planning, it might be something that's pulled from Canada's food guide. There's always an activity in that first hour. They might sit down with the community facilitator and learn about the reading of a recipe, and our community facilitator also does kitchen demos in that first hour, and those kitchen demos link directly back to the recipes that they will be cooking in the second hour. So in the second hour, they go together in the kitchen. There's 5 recipes cooked in each session. They usually break up into pairs or groups of 3, depending on how many people are participating. They cook all the recipes together in groups. They do all the prep work, and then they come back together for the third hour for some dining and discussion. And then they talk about mindful eating. They might talk about issues they had during the cooking, things that they like, things that they don't like. They talk about the taste of the food. They share tips together as a group. And then we always have follow-up fun. So there's a tiny bit of homework that we give them before they come back to the next session. And that might be getting them to cook a recipe from the book that they didn't cook that day. We also have activities that they can take back to their family as well. So we work in sort of 5 targeted curriculums right now. Lower income, newcomers to Canada, Punjabi, Indigenous, and seniors. By far, our food sense curriculum is the most popular. For the most part, that one is selected by our host organizations about over 60% of the time. They all have the same core learnings, really, but each curriculum might differ in slight tweaked ways. So for instance, the active seniors curriculum, they talk less about eating as a family and about kids' lunches, and more talk about maybe meals for 1 or 2. They talk more about healthy and active aging. In the Indigenous curriculum, the recipes are slightly different to include traditional foods, so they may use more salmon, more berries, and elk, and different meats that they would in other curriculums. The Punjabi one, we have it translated for the handbook for the participants, and they talk about healthy versions of Punjabi traditional recipes. And for newcomers, really, it might be their first time shopping in a Canadian grocery store, so there's more conversation around how do you find foods if you don't find something that you're familiar. Maybe people aren't familiar with canned foods, so there's more conversation around sort of that experience of being in a grocery store in Canada. Of course, outside of those 5 core curriculums, we do a lot of work in pilots, and timely to the conversation today, we're actually in the exploratory stage of developing a new youth program that will be focused on youth between the age of 13 to 18. Since typically our curriculums are for adults, this will be our first foray into the youth demographic. But as I said, we also run quite a few pilots. We've learned over the years how to sort of test the elasticity and sort of the flexibility of the program and the way it's delivered. So we have pilots in men's only groups. We have a prenatal curriculum. We have worked a lot with Shapedown BC, with Corrections Canada. We've done some work with them and inmates who are coming out who have never cooked for themselves before, and we go into certain environments and we teach them food skills. We've done a lot of work in the mental health sphere and also with youth and guardians. Some of our program challenges, the host organizations apply for someone from their organization to be trained as a community facilitator, which means that the host organization has to have the ability to cover the cost for the travel to the training. There's no cost to attend the training for the 3.5 days, but the host organization needs to be able to cover a plane ride or a hotel if they do need to come from out of town, which is obviously sometimes challenging for very small organizations. We do have quite a bit of attrition with our community facilitators. They move jobs within organizations, they leave to move somewhere else, and so we end up doing a lot of retraining, and we lose community facilitators for long periods of times, which can be a struggle. We always have a waiting list for our Train the Trainer program. Right now we can run about 6 to 7 a year. We'd love to be able to do one every single month, but we just don't have the resources to be able to do that. So getting through the waiting list is always a challenge to make sure that we can train everyone who's interested in being involved. And of course, there's barriers at the participant level. So a lot of our participants have trouble attending the program due to childminding issues, or maybe they can't afford transportation to the program, or transportation is an issue just overall. So we have to be creative with our host organizations trying to figure out how to work through that. And of course, a lot of our organizations might be in very remote areas, so being able to go to a grocery store is sometimes a challenge. We had one group that was in such a small community that they had to fly in the groceries once a week on a float plane. So there's lots of creative ways that the work gets done, but these can all be challenges that we have to work with individually with our host organizations. Food Skills has a very extensive evaluation done. To date, we've done 9. We're just starting to work on our 10th right now, which will be launched in the fall of this year. We right now collect data in a couple different ways. Our participants fill out a pre and post evaluation before they start and when they finish the program. We collect data from our facilitators on their experience and the experience that they perceive of the participants in the program. And we also speak to our host organizations as well to make sure that we get data from lots of different areas around our program. The evaluation outcomes are pretty consistent year after year, that participants do tell us that the program influences their eating behaviors, that participants eat more fruits and vegetables every day as a result of taking the program, which is a key indicator for the Ministry of Health out here in BC. So we love to see that one. We hear from our participants that they do cook more meals from scratch, and we know that, coming from what does scratch mean, that's very different to each person, but they do report that they spend more time in the kitchen cooking by themselves and with their families. And they also report that their confidence level is much higher after taking the program in terms of preparing new foods, trying new foods that they've never had before, like tofu, that they have more confidence in following safety in the kitchen, and that they also have learned a lot around food. Of course, again, this comes with challenges. Our data is all self-reported, so that can be an issue in terms of what the participant is telling us. We have numerous people that are involved in the collection of the data, so that can mean that there's inconsistencies that can affect the data that we have. And of course, it's based on a written paper survey, so there can be issues around literacy and of course language barriers with participants when they have to fill out the forms pre and post of the program. We have some unmatched forms where people might fill out a pre-form but not a post, or they miss questions, so that's always a challenge. And we also have limited ongoing contact with our participants. Right now, of course, we touch them pre and post, and we also a few years ago started reaching out to them 6 months after taking the program, just to get a sense of, have the learning still carried over 6 months later, and how are they feeling about cooking in the kitchen and their overall experience with healthy eating 6 months later. But after that, we really lose them, so we don't have any long-term findings for the program, which is all. So that is a really quick, brief introduction to food skills out here in BC. Thank you so much for the invitation, for involving me in the day. I'm learning so much given where we are in developing our own youth curriculum. Please feel free to visit our page at BCCDC if you wanted to learn more about food skills for families. And there's my contact information as well too, if anybody wanted to pop me an email or my direct line for more information. So thank you again.
Karen, thank you so much. It's really impressive, not only the core program, but how you've adapted it to various populations. Really impressive. So I just wanted to thank Janet, Andrew, and Karen. Unfortunately, to give us enough time to do our next step, we're not going to have a Q&A at this time, but I see people are writing and getting responses in the chat, so keep that up. That's great. But right now, I'll pass it on to Eric.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. And again, lots of provoking or stimulating discussion points. And I find it useful to sort of, rather than have a discussion with 40 people, break out into some breakout rooms again. And I'm going to use the same process, but let me just introduce the question that we'd like to ask you before we go into the breakout rooms. And so what we're going to ask you to do is talk about, programming and practice, and in what you've heard from the different speakers, what do you think are the most urgent priorities for food literacy programming and practice? So same instructions as before, except that we're going to randomly assign you in breakout rooms. You will have a moderator. I'm going to ask you to minimize Zoom, perhaps do the introductions first of all, and then minimize Zoom. We want you to capture ideas. You see if, you know, in terms of the number of ideas, if everybody can put in a couple of ideas, that will allow your moderator to stay sane and not have information overload. So I'm going to start the breakout rooms here and ask you to do probably 15 minutes in your breakout rooms. We will use, I hope you can use the sticky dot exercise again. And and you'll see the same screen where you'll click on the Zoom breakout rooms. Here we go.